Thank each one of you for taking time out of your schedules to attend this webinar. We are going through turbulent and extremely tough times, and your presence in this webinar clearly indicates your concern, your willingness to find solutions, work on action plans to see that the business sustains these times. I thank Alucast and Ian McMessy for taking this lead for and organizing this webinar for the benefit of the die-casting industry. This session after lunch hours is difficult to sustain, I know that. So I would want to make this session interesting and engaging. I would want you to type as and when I ask you some yeses or nos. There's a chat button in the bottom center of the screen. I promise you that I would do my best to deliver. Everyone in the webinar is experienced and involved. Everything which I am presenting today is what you all know. I have tried to present it in a structured way so that a solid action plan can be made after this session. Even if one information is what you can work on, it would be worth to be here till the end of this webinar. That's my intention, that we go back with our action plans based on strategies we feel would work. So this content is based on strategies that I have implemented in last 1 year and mostly in last 2 months of lockdown. I failed on some initially, but then worked on them till they worked and are successful to a large extent. So I would be sharing this personal experience of the strategies. So I would want to start with this. Hard times are like a washing machine. They twist, turn, and knock us around. But in the end, we come out cleaner, brighter, better than before. I truly believe in this. Most die casters who take this twist, turn, and knocking would sustain and continue and maybe grow too. Situation is grim, to say the least. But if we align our belief system in doing anything and everything that it takes, then we would not only sustain, continue, but also come out victorious. Before I start about this presentation, let me tell a brief about me and my company. I started this business 25 years ago, leaving a plush job in Larsen & Toubro, Mumbai, before landing here in Faridabad. Struggled and failed miserably in the initial years before putting things together and then working to reach where we have reached today. And as for the company is concerned, Braga Group has been serving over 200 plus die casters worldwide for the last 25 years. We have peripherals which make to cater to the defect-free castings. So we have products like jet cooling, vacuum systems, and then there's a product which we introduced recently in Eurogus, which is called Combo, which is a first combination of jet cooling and vacuum system both. And then we have accessories and consumables, accessories like pin breakage detection device, flow sensing devices, and consumables like jet coolers, core pins, chill vents, short sleeves. If you see our clientele, we have most OEs and tier ones in die casting in India and across the world. And we globally present in several countries, including US, Mexico, Spain, Europe, now in South Korea, Taiwan, and in Russia. Now let's get to the situation right now. If you see this slide, as per IMF, the cumulative loss to global GDP over 2020 and 21 from the pandemic crisis would be around $9 trillion, greater than the economies of Japan and Germany combined. And if you see this, the next slide, the IMF sees GDP per capita shrinking across 170 nations due to this coronavirus. But the projection may actually be more optimistic picture than reality produces. As per IMF, in 2020, global GDP will move through a great fall down. Situation will be worse than the Great Depression of 1930. In 2020, Indian GDP will go from 4.2 to 1.9. You can see it here. That this recovery in 2021 is only partial, as the level of economic activities is projected to remain below the level. If you see this slide carefully, due to lockdown, we can see the impact on automobile sector. Starting from the United Kingdom, which is the third largest components market, USD 439 million. They're staying at home order and shutdown of all factories. Again, in Germany, this is the second largest components market, USD 782 million. The shutdown of all factories have partially now opened up, and this lockdown from 19th April has now opened up, and they are working partially in the factories. With the United States, the largest components market, close to $2.8 billion, and second largest car market, close to $727 million. The stay-at-home orders in most of the states, now they are opening up. Mexico, again, is the largest car export market. Is still there is a ban on gatherings for 50 people. There's still a state of emergency there. Same, it's South Africa. And if you see what is the impact on automobile sector, the impact is wide-ranged, and it is perceived to be larger than the 2008 financial crisis. In multiple monetary and fiscal measures, such as postponement in tax collections and policy rate cuts, need to be implemented. In the short term, domestic demand will decline in India. It's because health and welfare have become top priorities in India, as the government has enforced this lockdown, the first lockdown, second, and now the third, and now the fourth lockdown is on the way. The COVID-19 crisis will have a direct impact on tourism, hospitality, manufacturing, and non-essential services. So what's the big impact? The big impact is the India's major export market severely hit. Export of close to USD 9 billion worth of vehicles and components to North America and Europe is stalled. Approximately 31% of cars are exported to North America and Europe, and 60% of components exported to North America and Europe. Well, let's see the impact on Indian automobile sector. We see that there has been a slowdown in last 12 to 18 months, and there's a lockdown since 24th March. That's the first thing which everybody can realize, which is happening since last 1.5 years. The auto sector had already undergone considerable slowdown. It's because of the structural changes, beginning with the goods and service tax, shift in shared mobility, axle load reforms, then the BS4 to BS6 transition, liquidity crunch, and so on. Now, this pandemic led 56-day lockdown till date couldn't have been ill-timed, and there is a general cut in consumer demands because of this. Honorable Supreme Court had given some relief to BS4 stock liquidation, except Delhi. BS4 vehicles can register 10 days after lockdown. Now, companies are looking to postpone new model launches, go slow on new capacity additions in light of the expected slowdown after the lockdown is lifted. Investments are being relooked. There's an interesting fact which has emerged. That's the change in the global supply preferences. The Japanese government has asked Japanese companies to shift back from China, and so is US and other countries are looking at reducing over dependence on China. So it's kind of good news for India because there are a lot of countries and companies across the world who are looking at alternate sourcing and their over dependence, as I said. There's another good news is that after COVID-19 in China, personal vehicle use increased by 35% to maintain social distance. So going by what China had seen, it might be a similar activity or similar news for India too. If you see this image by PwC, they have come out with what is the impact on automobile sector. There are various impacts, and they have defined a percentage wise. If you see the biggest impact is the cash inflow. Cash flow is the biggest impact on the automobile sector. Well, that's an impact which is there in almost every industry for that matter. So let's look into the challenges for die casting. What could be the challenges for die casting? And then when I'm saying this for die casting, it also means that there are similar challenges in other manufacturing sector also. But let's be specific for die casting. We are going to face, die casting companies are going to face uncertain schedules and revenues. After this pandemic, the consumer behavior is expected to change and become restrictive. The schedule is expected to remain uncertain, and so are revenues dependent on schedules. Due to 56 days of lockdown, all fixed cost remains, but no revenue is generated. To top it all, there is a cash flow constraint, there is a liquidity crunch, severe liquidity crunch, which is flowing from the OE to the tier 1 and tier 1 to the tier 2. Also, the fixed cost remains and the bank interests are still going on. Now, there is also a price reduction demand from the customers. The customers want to have their purchase prices lowered down, and so they're asking for price reduction demands. That's a big challenge for die casting. The demand, the schedules are lower and uncertain, and they still a price reduction demand is been asked from them. In totality, there's an element of business uncertainty. There is a total scenario of business uncertainty, and that's also for die casting. To top it all, we have a demotivated workforce who doesn't know what is the future for them and what the future lies for them. There are salary cuts. There are instances where they are not confident of their own future, and that's what we have a workforce which is now demotivated. If you talk about the blue-collared ones, you see a host of them moving out of cities. They're traveling back to their villages. That's a bigger challenge which is going to come when we've already started with some level of manufacturing activity here in North India. The biggest challenge is going to come with these people who are really working on the shop floors. Now let's look into the 10 key strategies, which what we could do on taking care of the situation which has come to us. Before we dwell on these strategies, one thing which I really want to mention is this very famous quote from Peter Drucker: "What gets measured gets managed." And I believe that what gets measured gets managed, gets reduced, gets controlled, gets increased. You can do anything and everything by measuring it, when you measure anything. So when I'm going to speak about all the strategies, the bottom line is what you need to figure out how these strategies could work at your end and how it could be measured. The first step would be to find out a way to measure those elements which we need to work on. Now, the first strategy is for customers, and that's true because if the customers are there, we are here, we are in the business, we cater to our cash flows, the fixed cost, all the cost, the whole ecosystem works if the customers are there. So let's talk about what we can do about customers, what else we can do. We have been doing a lot of things for customers, but now in this scenario, what else could be done? The first thing and the foremost thing is to retain the existing customers. That's the first thing. That's the easiest thing which you can do right now, is to retain an existing customer. It's extremely important to retain an existing customer. The cost of retaining an existing customer is 6 times less than generating new customers. I would urge everyone to look into a new thing which is called creating a customer relationship manager at your end. I'm not talking about a CRM software. I'm talking about something within the organization or within a manufacturing sector that right now and in times to come, this one slot could be created in every factory, in any manufacturing enterprise, be it a die casting company, that you have someone already in your team could be assigned as a customer relationship manager. This is extremely important these days. I'll explain you why. Now we have SOPs from various customers who would, those SOPs have to be adhered for the social distancing and other things. The role of this customer relationship manager starts when you actually dispatch the product. Normally most manufacturing companies believe that once they dispatch the product, the story ends. But believe me, the story starts when you dispatch the product. This customer relationship manager would only start its work when the material gets dispatched, till it gets delivered in the company's gates, till it gets delivered to the stores, and till it gets delivered to the user. Now there's a big challenge now, and your customer is going to face and a lot of trouble. When your transport facilities, your delivery mechanism is would sometimes fail on the SOPs, and then the customer is going to get irritated because of that. If you have one person who takes care of this activity and also other activities which I'll mention, then you take care of one thing which is like which is like specially for a customer. The second activity which this customer relationship manager can look into is coordinating with the customer for customer complaints. So one window who will coordinate for customer complaints. And the third activity is also follow for the payments. So three activities. This customer relationship manager would build relationships with the customer, and because this manager is looking after what does the customer need? The customer needs their dispatches on time, their deliveries at their gates, all SOPs mentioned, everything. And that's how they develop a relationship, and then they can also follow up for the payments, probably looking into the cash flows, which I'm going to come. The second thing is to regain lost customers. This is how we did in last 2 months. We made a list of customers we had from 2011 till 2019. Friends, we were for a shock because we had close to 250 customers in our list. Some of the customers left us, while others we somehow left them. And we realized that these customers could again be touched back, and then get in touch with them, ask them what's going on, because those customers have traveled to different horizons, and they have changed a bit, and while we've also changed. So getting in touch with those lost customers, the first thing which you can do is make a list of those customers. You can get those lists from your ERP or SAP or whatever software you're using, and then get in touch slowly with those customers. You never know, they're also looking for alternate sourcing. So probably you could get an RFQ from them in these days also. And the third and the most important thing is to acquire new customers. Here we developed a lead management system, which probably you can see there. And this is working. This is what you need to work. Every die casting company in India need to work on. And I'll come to a figure where you realize what's the total potential of the die casting industry in the world, and what's your percentage, what's your business in that area. So I think it's time for people to get in touch with work on LinkedIn. There are platforms like LinkedIn, platforms like Zing, then there are platforms like Viadio. They work in Europe, and it is time for, I don't know if there are people from marketing and sales in this session. If they are there, they have to seriously work on identifying every country and every company in that country, and get in touch with them. Remember, those guys in Europe and US are looking at alternate sourcing. If you land up with them, probably you get those RFQs. So there are tools where you can actually get these contacts of every company in every country which you want. We've been working on this, and we've been unearthing close to 300 to 400 contacts every single day, spotting every company in any country, any die caster across the world, from Poland to Germany to Russia to Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, anywhere you say, US, Canada, Hungary, all of them. We're trying to spot every die casting company there. So that's where probably one thing which again the sales and marketing need to do is to work on these strategies for the customers. And you can go into depth, but since there's a paucity of time, so I'll be really quick on these strategies. The second strategy, yes, that's what everybody is thinking about, is cost reduction, and probably every company management, everyone is looking into how we can do this, take these measures for cost reduction. Now, these cost reduction initiatives are not new to us. These have been going on, and now let's look into how we can do what we can do right now. The first thing is the manufacturing cost. Yes, we can still work on material management. That's a very key. That's a key area where every die caster, I think, needs to work on reducing the manufacturing cost. As the demand is reducing, it is necessary to reduce manufacturing cost. Manufacturing cost can be reduced by material management, which means utilization of workforce and resources, machines, dependent on material management. Labor and machinery will be, mind you, labor and machinery will be poorly utilized. The profitability and even the existence of the company will be threatened. If the right materials in the right quantities are not available at the right time, the process cannot produce what it should. So in these days of uncertain demands, has to be more emphasis on cost cutting through material management. The second thing is bottleneck management. Now this, what is bottleneck? Bottleneck is the total capacity of the product, which is equal to that of bottleneck. It doesn't matter if you have more capacity before and after the product. So we've been investing on automations, and we've been investing on trying to see that we reduce the cycle time of the product. I think since we are very precarious about investing anymore, we need to identify, every die caster needs to identify what is the bottleneck, and then if some investment needs to be done, the investment needs to be only done at the bottleneck, and that's what is going to increase the throughput and ultimately reduce your manufacturing cost. The third thing, which is really needs to be looked at, is the energy management. Again, coming back, die casting, melting, and holding molten metal are the major energy consuming processes for die casting. About 77% of total energy is used for the melting and holding process. A study reported that thermal efficiency of typical furnace ranges from 7% to 76%. Now there are a host of steps which can be taken on this aspect. But we'll quickly go to, we're covering major strategies. So we'll go to the next step is actually reduce the purchasing cost. There are various ways to reduce the purchasing cost. Now is the time to look into what all were you purchasing and make a list of all what was purchased, and then reduce the purchasing cost. We fortunately had some order from a company in South Korea during the COVID, and that's what we spent good one month negotiating for the purchasing cost. The second thing is to reduce the fixed cost. We'll dwell more on the fixed cost and see what formats, how we can use this method to measure first what's the fixed cost during lockdown and what could be the fixed cost post lockdown, and how we can cater to the reducing this fixed cost. The third most important thing right now for every company, or maybe every die casting company also, is to improve its cash flows. Everybody is talking about cash flows, how to improve that cash flow. And it's very critical these days to improve this cash flows. That's the air, that's the oxygen which is with your company, with every company, and that needs to be improved. Let's look into it, how we can do it. Let's get the receivables on paper, and let's get the receivables on your software and deploy CRM. As I told you, the CRM has got this second activity on only working on this payment, prepare a payment collection engine, and so that the CRM can dedicatedly work on this, collecting every bit of payment, following up for the payments. That's what will matter now. Of course, the second thing which you can do is negotiate terms with suppliers. And nobody wants to lose a customer in these days. The suppliers who have been serving you since last many years, they still want to go ahead with that business, probably could understand. You can sit, you can talk to them and negotiate on terms with suppliers. And the best thing which can be done is pre-plan expenses. In these times, of course, budgeting and all we had been doing, but in these times, there is a complete shift in planning for the expenses. And we'll look into it, how we can do it. And the one thing which you can do to improve cash flow is to sell the dead inventory. There is, I mean, if we will dwell more on this dead inventory thing, you'll be amazed to see how much dead inventory every company is carrying these days. And if the company still has got dead inventory in these times, then probably it is sitting on its own cash flow blockages. Now, this is something very unique and new, probably I'm talking about, is to have a cash reserve creation. I know many people, when I talk about creating a cash reserve in these times, people say, are you crazy? I can only sustain these times. How can I think of creating a cash reserve? But every company, whether it's die casting or otherwise, has to start creating cash reserve. There's no better time than today to start creating a cash reserve. How we can do it? I told you earlier, we've been doing all these strategies in our company, and we started with cash reserve somewhere in December 2019. And fortunately, in 3 months, we could create some reserves. Probably that's coming handy these days. And how to do it? Simple, create a cash reserve account in your bank and then fix a percentage of incoming payments. Whatever payments, cash flows which is coming in, whatever, every week or every 14 days, some percentage, maybe 0.5, 1, maybe 2, whatever, depending on your business, has to go to this account. And the third rule is don't touch this money ever, and start building now. So one of the key strategies for every die casting company right now is to still in these days look into how they can. The key lesson is, if they had their cash reserves, probably companies with cash reserves would be working better than those companies which didn't have cash reserves. Now there are limits, and there are banking which is still going on, and people say that instead of putting in the cash reserve account, they could have done in a banking account where the interest rates would probably be saved. But the theory of cash reserve says, just forget everything, put some percentage of all incoming payments into a new cash reserve account. That's very important, and probably this is the best time to start now. This is the best time in the toughest of times. If you can start this, probably in next 6 months or 1 year, you will end up building a reserve, which could, this uncertainty is, I don't know, here to stay for a long time, and probably this would come in handy for the company. Now let's look into something called inventory management. We've been doing this, and this is the most opportune time. This is something which you can start doing from tomorrow morning. Inventory management is the money which is there on your shop floors, on your stores, in your in the dead inventories. So the first thing which every company needs to look into is the raw material inventory. There could be raw material which has been sitting on your raw material stores since last 1 year. Probably you need to look into it, whether those raw materials are still needed, the customer is still interested in those specific raw material, or you can get rid of that. You can still work on reducing the inventory levels, and this immediate reduction in inventory levels, on the basis of some projection which you're getting from your OEs, would be the first step to be done. The similar activity for work in progress. There's a host of inventory which is lying in work in progress. Just go around your shop floor, you will see piles of work in progress sitting there, and the shop floor, the prime most activity is to Make a list of all that is in work in progress. If your software is supporting that, very good. But if it's not supporting that, you need to make a list of work in progress and then decide on what needs to be done. Talk to the customer, get to know what is their idea about this material which is there in your work in progress. And similarly for finished goods, look into your finished goods stores. You might have finished goods which is sitting from last many months, maybe a year. Probably it's time to segregate that finished good and probably remelt it, or probably again list it down in a dead inventory. And the similar thing for tools and consumables. Probably what I want to say is that every company needs to do this for everything which is in stores, either of these or even more than these. This is a real. This is a time when you can't have dead stock sitting in your company and you're struggling with cash flows. This is something which you can liquidate tomorrow morning. Make a list and liquidate. That's something probably which every company should work on. We worked on. I'll share you a sheet how we worked on. And I mean today, I want every company to have a target of at least -30 to -40% reduction in inventory costs, inventory levels, so that's where when we start the company, the inventories don't kill the company at least, and that's what would save the company from these times. At our level, in our company, we made something like an inventory management sheet. We have an ERP, but we didn't buy some. We worked on Google Sheets, and this is a kind of simple software which we made. We have the dump coming from our ERP, and we every day monitor what is the inventory level. So every whether it's finished good, whether it's raw material, whether it's in process, all dead inventory, everything is being monitored. And if you see, the purple color is about is the inventory which is more than what is required. And because we've now structured the whole thing and the levels have been redefined, this is something which we need. And this is my intention, and I need to look how I can reduce this inventory. And that's where, if I reduce, I'm able to reduce that by 30 to 40%. That's the direct impact on the company. Now let's look into the sixth strategy, which is the fixed cost. We've done a similar activity. We've been following an activity where we're monitoring something like 30 different variables of fixed cost in any company. Now these variables are common to every company, and we've been monitoring we have a plan in action with this fixed cost from December 19, January 20, February 20, then March 20. That's where the 23rd, when the lockdown started. And then we made an April 20 lockdown version 1, an April 20 lockdown version 2 fixed cost. That's where we came in reality to the fixed cost. And as I told you earlier, whatever gets measured gets managed. Believe me, friends, we could actually analyze where we had to reduce. And we stuck budgets. We kept budgets on every element of fixed cost, every small fixed cost, and therein this awareness in the whole company came in how we could reduce this fixed cost in these times. And then it still needs to be budgeted. Fixed cost heads needs to be defined. Then benchmarking of the budget in these times, needs to be defined. How we can revive the company. So we need to define every expense head with the plan versus actual, what's happening, and still monitor it really hard. Probably monitor it on weekly basis. My system, the system which we work on, are being monitored on live, which means every hourly basis we get to know what is the fixed cost on various heads. Again, if you really need to take a target, fixed target, that there has to be at least a reduction of 30 to 40% in fixed cost of the company. Now let's get into the next aspect, the next strategy, which really I want to talk about. It's very interesting for me, and I hope it would be interesting. Some revelation will happen in this strategy. Now let's look into the market remapping. We talked about something called the supply chain preferences, which have changed. from China, from, everybody's talking about that. Guess what? Let's see what is the world market share of die casting. Now it's time to see what is the world market share of die casting. As per the research which we did, the world market share is close to 30 billion USD, which is close to 2.25 lakh crores. I know there's a lot of talks about many lakhs of crores in last 4 or 5 days, but then we also came down to this figure of 2.25 lakhs crores. That's the world market, die casting market. And I want you to analyze, think about it, write on a paper, what is your, I mean, this is the world market in good times. So I want you to write down on a piece of paper, what is your turnover, what's the turnover of your company, and what is your share in this whole market. Is it coming to 0.001% or 0.001 or 0.01%? There's something which will come out of this exercise. So just look into what is your market share with respect to the global die casting market share. Let's assume what was there in February or January. I know that market of die casting would have reduced in these times and probably will be reduced in times to come. Then your market share is also going to be reduced because you have fixed number of customers. If you do not have more customers, the market share still remains same. So probably if this market share is reduced by 50%, let's say the worst thing happens, same thing, you will still have the market share as 0.01 or a 0.001 or a 0.001. The second question which I want every sales and marketing individual in the company needs to be asked is, what in this global supply chain change preferences? How am I placed? How am my company placed? What are we thinking about it? What actions are we taking about it? Are we getting in touch? Are we taking deep, diving deep into it and taking this, converting this into an opportunity? And then the third thing which I want everyone to think about is, what are the new sectors which we are thinking about? It's whether medical or lighting or aerospace. What's my plan about it? Am I going to be sitting only with automotive? Is there any other sectors which can also be opening up in these times? With changing times, probably you do not know. There are a lot of things which will change. So what's my action plan? What's my action plan on the strategies, on the thoughts which you have for on these 3 points? Probably if you brainstorm with your team, with the people you have in your team, with the top management, there'll be a lot of answers which you'll come across, a lot of ways you can work on it. It's time to take action right now. And believe me, friends, there was no better time to take action than this time. And there's a lot of people sitting at home, working from home. This is the best time to take action. Again, the eighth, the strategy which I would really want to talk about is team alignment and readiness. This is the time when we need to align our teams. This is the time when we need to really motivate them. This is a real picture of our company where we've aligned our workers on Zoom, and we've trained our workers to come on Zoom. And then during the lockdown period, when they're sitting in their homes, understand what might be going on with them sitting in a 8x10 room with no ventilation, and the whole day they're watching their WhatsApp and negativity coming around. So we decided a month ago that we'll train them on Zoom, get them on Zoom, whoever can come on Zoom, and then start training them. And probably that's why we could retain almost like 95% of those workmen. That's the biggest challenge. We've been working on trying to train our people working from home for our staff, white collared. But if you ask me, you need to work more on your blue collared people, because those people are difficult to get in these times now. So one is, they have to understand, everyone needs to understand the theory of this new norm of working from home. This could be for another, at least for the white collared people, this could be for next 2 months, 6 months, 1 year. So work from home is the new norm. That's where we have to focus on. Every company, individual, or every company team member has to be aligned with this. The second is work with technology. Now it is time that workers are getting trained on Zoom. There is no pardon for anyone who says that they cannot work with technology now. They have. There is no other way. If any company and its team, they have to work with technology now. Work with SOP. Now this is the world of SOPs coming in, and SOPs are it is for their own personal safety, for the safety of the company, for the safety of their families. SOPs have to be hammered. I mean, I'm using this word hammered because that's where the SOPs have to be really brought about in the teams now. They need to be trained every now and then on these SOPs. Again, now since they're working from home, work delegation and follow-up system needs to be really strong. They are not coming to offices. Nobody's coming to offices. Your team members, you have to be a very strong delegation and a follow-up system. And again, cross-training. This is a time for people to learn on working on your ERPs, your softwares, and cross-training. Create videos so that they could be cross-trained on things which probably somebody leaves the company. Probably still you can work around by cross-training. So this is the 8th strategy, and I'll quickly come to the 9th. Okay, now this is a new, this is something which I really wanted to talk about. This is called, I named it collaborative capacity utilization. We've been hearing this, this is food for thought for every die casting company in India and across the world now. You know, Maruti and Toyota had a partnership. They still have a partnership where Maruti will give cars like Baleno, Ciaz, Brezza, Ertiga to Toyota, and Corolla will be offered to Maruti Suzuki, and Toyota will also offer electric and hybrid technology to Suzuki. Now, the biggest rivals in the car industry, they came together to have a collaborative capacity utilization. That was the prime, one of the prime underlining, underlining fact was that they wanted to collaborate so that their capacities could be utilized. And when the biggest competitors could do that, my question to everyone is, can we think the same for the die casting industry also? Now let's look into how we have die casting companies with very big sized machines, and we have die casting companies who have access to markets. Let's look into it, whether we can think and talk with each other, and let's look into it, how we can create a collaborative capacity utilization partnerships, or maybe more than that in these times to come, because right now the sustenance of every company is so important that probably this is the need of the hour when companies could think of coming together and utilize their capacity. As a country, probably we need to get together and use this, make this as an opportunity of coming together and utilizing their capacities. And the last thing is my favorite thing, which is called the systems and processes. These are the best times where we've been working on reducing the process times. Now is the time where we have to reduce the waiting time. You know, the waiting time of every operational activity in any company is close to 70 to 90%, and the process time is only 10%. We have done a lot of, we have installed all kinds of systems, which is database management system we have in our company. We have information-based management system. Now is the time we need to think about something called time-based management system. Yes, probably again reach out all the flows in any processes in the company and look into devising the TAT for every processes. This is the time where we can actually develop these systems. No expensive software is needed. Your team needs to be trained on Google Sheets probably, and they can align these homemade softwares, which can only look into the biggest component of operational time, which is the 90%, which is called the waiting time. If this could be worked on these days, probably in every company, which we have done in our company, is aligned in a much better manner, wherein the waiting time is addressed, and probably that ultimately reduces the operational cost of the company. I would like to end by a quote. We all have dreams, but in order to make dreams come into reality, It takes an awful lot of determination, dedication, self-discipline, and effort. I would leave you with this thought and with this